John Elliot had always believed in simple things. Steady job, loyal partner, peaceful home. He wasn't the type to chase fame or fortune, nor did he crave adrenaline or chaos. As a 42-year-old paramedic in Chicago, John lived for structure, routines, and predictability. His life revolved around serving others during moments of crisis, and coming home to a wife who adored him and 2 children who greeted him with warm hugs and sleepy smiles. From the outside, his life was enviable. A charming house in the suburbs. A beautiful wife, Clarissa, who taught 2nd grade at the local elementary school. Aiden, their precocious 7-year-old, always asking questions. And Grace, 4, who rarely let go of her father's finger when he was around. But under the surface, something had always been off. It started as a whisper in John's mind. Something barely audible at first. The kind of thing you brush off because it's easier to believe you're imagining it. After all, Clarissa had always been good to him. They met a decade ago, just after John's first failed engagement. Clarissa had swept into his life with a gentleness he didn't know he needed. Soft-spoken, elegant, always patient. They married within 2 years. But even before their wedding day, John had noticed inconsistencies. Moments when Clarissa seemed distracted, like her mind was somewhere else. Then, one day, during a particularly bad argument about his long hours at work, she stormed out and didn't return until the next morning. A month later, she was pregnant. Aiden was born with hazel eyes and sandy brown hair. John's father had hazel eyes, and Clarissa had the same hair color, so he didn't think much of it. But something inside him stayed uneasy. Then came Grace 4 years later. And again, questions surfaced. One evening, while playing in the living room, Grace looked up at John and said something that chilled his blood. "You're not my real daddy. Mommy told me." John blinked. "What did you say, sweetheart?" Grace giggled. "Nothing," she said, running off. But John noticed Clarissa standing in the doorway. Her face pale, lips pressed into a thin line. "She doesn't know what she's saying," Clarissa said quickly. "She's been watching those silly shows again." But the seed was planted, and it began to grow. John started noticing other things. Things that never made sense before, but he had chosen to ignore. Like the photo he found while searching for batteries in a drawer. An old, slightly crumpled photo of Clarissa with a man he had never seen before. They were at a park. She was holding a baby. His baby. He asked her about it. "That's my cousin Thomas," she said too quickly. He moved to Canada years ago. But there was no warmth in the way the man in the photo looked at Clarissa. It wasn't cousin-like. It was something deeper. Something intimate. John bought an at-home DNA test, telling Clarissa he got it for a fun family ancestry project. The next day it was gone. "Did you move the DNA kit?" he asked. "Oh," Clarissa said, avoiding his eyes. "Grace spilled juice on it. I threw it out." He didn't believe her. Then there was Grace's medical diagnosis. A rare blood condition triggered by a specific type of nut. Neither John nor Clarissa had any history of it in their family. Or so he thought. Until he remembered a night out years ago, when Clarissa ran into an old flame and awkwardly tried to steer John away from the conversation. That man, she later admitted, had the same condition. John began to spiral quietly. He couldn't talk to anyone about it. Who would believe him? He didn't want to ruin his family over suspicions. Until he overheard Clarissa talking on the phone one night, when she thought he was asleep. "He's been acting weird lately. Like, he suspects something." No, he doesn't know. But if he finds out, we're screwed. Screwed. John started documenting everything. He saved the photo, took screenshots of messages, started tracking Clarissa's whereabouts using an app. He hated himself for doing it. But he needed the truth. And finally he got it. He collected hair samples from Aiden and Grace's brushes and sent them to a private lab for testing. He waited. Days felt like weeks. Then the results came. Both children. 0% probability of paternity. The world fell out from under him. John didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just sat at the kitchen table, staring at the paper until the sun came up. He made a decision. No confrontation. Not yet. He moved his savings to a different account. Cancelled joint cards. Hired a private investigator to dig into Clarissa's past. He even began divorce paperwork, but kept it quiet. If she had lied about the children, what else had she lied about? Then, 3 nights later, someone broke into the house. Nothing was taken, except the DNA test results. On the mirror, written in red lipstick. "Stop digging." Clarissa claimed she didn't know what happened. She looked genuinely terrified. John, who would do this? He didn't answer. The next day, the private investigator called him. They agreed to meet at a quiet diner. "What I found isn't just about your kids," the PI said. "Clarissa isn't who she says she is. Her name, her history. It's all fake. She had another identity before she met you. And there was a man. He vanished 2 months before she moved to Chicago." PI handed him a USB drive. "Everything you need is on here. And John, be careful. This goes deeper than just paternity." John nodded, heart pounding. That night, after Clarissa went to bed, he sat in his car in the driveway and plugged the USB into his laptop. A folder opened. Inside, photos, scanned documents, and a single video. He clicked the video. It was old surveillance footage. A woman, almost certainly Clarissa, in a hospital room, holding a newborn. But the birth certificate attached to the file read, "Mother, Clarissa Jennings, father. Unknown." But Clarissa's last name wasn't Jennings. At least not anymore. The scanned ID popped up. Clarissa Jennings. Date of birth, social security number. Everything different from the woman he married. The screen faded. John stared into the darkness. Who was his wife? And who was the father of his children? John Elliot couldn't sleep. Not after what he had just watched. The USB drive still sat on the passenger seat of his car, glowing slightly from the overhead light. Inside that tiny device were answers he never wanted, but needed. Clarissa Jennings. Not Clarissa Elliot. Not the woman he thought he married. Her past was a lie. Her identity forged. But why? And how did it connect to the children? The more he learned, the more the foundation of his life crumbled beneath him. He walked back into the house quietly, heart pounding in his chest like a warning drum. Clarissa was asleep in their bed, peaceful, innocent, or pretending to be. John lay awake beside her until dawn. The next morning he called in sick. He spent hours digging through the folders on the USB. There were more photos. One of them showed Clarissa in a courthouse, holding hands with a man who looked vaguely familiar. The timestamp was just 8 months before John and Clarissa met. Marriage license. John's blood ran cold. His wife had been married before, to a man named David Holcomb, but there were no divorce papers. Then he found a missing person report. David Holcomb, age 34. Disappeared September 2008. Case status, cold. John stood up and paced. If David was never found, and Clarissa never filed for divorce, was she still legally married to him? Was his entire marriage void? He needed to know more. He called the private investigator again. "You didn't tell me about David," John said, voice tight. "I was going to," the PI replied. "But you needed to see it first. There's more. You should come to my office." That afternoon, John sat across from the investigator in a windowless room. Clarissa used to go by Clara Jennings. She lived in Minnesota, worked as a nurse, met David Holcomb while volunteering. They got married quickly. Then David vanished. The last person he was seen with, her. John's stomach churned. Do the police suspect her? They questioned her, but there wasn't enough evidence. No body, no crime scene. She moved to Chicago 6 months later, changed her name. That's when she met you. And the kids. Aiden was born less than a year after David disappeared. Grace years later. We can't trace the father. John leaned back. The room spun. So Clarissa might be involved in her former husband's disappearance. And Aiden could be David's son. What should I do? Be careful. She's already hiding things. And she knows you're suspicious. Don't confront her yet. Get more evidence. Then go to the authorities. That night, John searched the house. He started in the basement. Clarissa never went down there. Behind a stack of old Christmas decorations, he found a locked box. Small, black, dusty. He picked it up, heavy in his hands. Inside, an old journal, some photos, and a burner phone. The journal was full of entries. I don't know if I can keep doing this. I want to be free. But he'll never let me go. He said if I ever left, he'd ruin me. So I did what I had to do. The lake was quiet that night. No one saw me. I waited until he was asleep. It was quick. I didn't look back. John froze. Was she confessing to murder? He kept reading. When I met John, I saw my chance. Second life. He's gentle, kind. Nothing like David. I just want to be safe. Safe. With a lie. But sometimes I think he knows. The way he looks at me. I wish he didn't love me so much. The last entry was just weeks ago. He bought a DNA kit. I saw it. He's getting too close. I might have to disappear again. But not before I make sure the kids are safe. John breaks. He sat in the dark basement, shaking. Everything he believed in was gone. Clarissa had lied. She might have killed a man. She might leave again. He took photos of every page. Then he burned the journal in the fire pit outside. He didn't want her knowing he had seen it. The next day, Clarissa acted normal. Made pancakes. Played with Grace. Kissed John on the cheek. He felt sick. He decided to get custody of the children. Even if they weren't biologically his. They were his in every way that mattered. He wouldn't let them fall into the hands of a liar, or worse. He contacted a lawyer. Filed a motion. He waited. One evening, he came home from work and the house was silent. Clarissa and the kids were gone. No note. No message. Her phone, disconnected. John called everyone. Her sister, her job, the school. No one knew anything. Then a knock at the door. Police officer stood outside. Are you John Elliot? Yes. We found your children. They were dropped off at a shelter 2 hours ago. The woman said she was their mother. She left no name. John's knees gave out. He drove to the shelter. Aiden and Grace ran into his arms. Where's Mommy? He asked. Aiden shrugged. She said we had to go on an adventure. And John Elliot sat in his dimly lit living room, staring at the frozen frame of the video. David Holcomb, live, staring into the security camera of a gas station in Ohio. The timestamp read, 6 months ago. Clarissa had sworn David was gone. Her journal had hinted at murder. But the man she claimed to have buried was breathing, walking, staring back through the screen. Why would she lie? What was she hiding? John replayed the footage a dozen times, analyzing every step, every motion. David wasn't hiding. He looked calm, almost smug. And then it hit him. This was planted. Someone had sent this footage to manipulate him. But who? And why? The answer came 2 days later. John was picking up Grace from preschool when his phone rang. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. John Elliot. Deep voice. Measured. Cold. Speaking. You want to know the truth about Clarissa? Meet me tonight. 10 p.m. Rockport Docks. Come alone. Who is this? The line went dead. John didn't tell anyone. He arranged for his neighbor, Mrs. Delaney, to watch the kids. Said it was an emergency shift. At 10 p.m. sharp, John pulled up at the abandoned docks. Fog rolled over the water. The air smelled of salt and gasoline. Shadows danced under the moonlight. A man stepped out of the mist. David Holcomb. Older. But unmistakably him. John didn't know whether to punch him or run. You're alive, John said, voice shaking. Of course I am. Clarissa didn't kill me. But she tried. David lit a cigarette and leaned against a post. Clara, or Clarissa, whatever she calls herself now, wasn't always dangerous. First she was sweet, quiet, but she had secrets. I started digging into her past. Found old restraining orders, a sealed juvenile file from Alabama. I confronted her. That's when everything changed. He took a drag. She poisoned me. Tried to make it look like an overdose. I woke up in a hospital 3 states away. By the time I recovered, she was gone. Changed her name. Moved on. Why didn't you go to the police? John asked. I did. They didn't believe me. No proof. No crime scene. She's good at this, John. She's done it before. What do you want from me? David dropped the cigarette and crushed it under his boot. I want to end this. We find her. We expose her. Together. David and John began tracing Clarissa's recent movements. Credit card activity, old addresses, work history. John contacted the private investigator again, who agreed to assist under one condition: full immunity for anything he discovered. After a week of tracking, they got a lead. Clarissa had rented a storage unit under the name Claire Jennings in Iowa. Inside they found documents, photos, and something shocking. Birth certificates. 3 of them. Aiden Holcomb, father. David Holcomb, Grace Jennings, father. Unknown baby girl. Deceased. Name Lily Jennings. John never knew about Lily. There was no mention of a 3rd child. A newspaper clipping, yellowed and torn, told the story. Toddler drowns in bathtub while mother distracted. No charges filed. Clarissa had a child before Aiden. A child who died under her care. John could barely breathe. They hatched a plan. John would pretend to be breaking down. He'd post cryptic messages online, hoping to lure Clarissa out. He knew she was watching. Somewhere. She wouldn't let go of the kids forever. Not without checking in. And it worked. A message came through an old email. You're spiraling. You're not safe for them. I'm coming back. A location followed. A secluded motel in Indiana. Room 27. John and David alerted the police. A sting operation was set up. The night she arrived, Clarissa looked different. Hair dyed black. Sunglasses. Limp. She approached the motel cautiously. Knocked twice. The door opened. John stood inside. Hello, Clarissa. Or Clara. Or whatever your name is. She froze. Behind her, officers stepped from the shadows. Put your hands where I can see them. Clarissa ran. But David was waiting. He tackled her to the ground. He screamed. You have no idea what I've survived. The officers cuffed her. John watched silently as she was dragged away. Trial was swift. Clarissa was charged with identity fraud, attempted murder of David, child endangerment, and obstruction of justice. The journal entries, combined with testimonies from both John and David, built an airtight case. She was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison. John was awarded full custody of Aiden and Grace. He sat them down, explained what he could in age-appropriate words. He told them they were safe, that he loved them. They cried. He cried harder. But the healing had begun. Months later, John received a letter from Clarissa, written in neat, elegant handwriting. You still don't know everything, John. Grace's father. He wasn't a stranger. He was someone you knew. Look closer. Ask the one man you trust the most. No signature. John reread the letter 5 times. Who could she mean? He thought of the private investigator. He thought of his best friend, Marcus. Then he thought of his own brother. John decided not to chase that final truth. Some questions don't deserve answers. Some wounds need time, not exposure. He took Aiden and Grace to the lake that weekend. They laughed, played, laughed some more. He watched the sunset with them by his side. Whatever the past had taken from him, the future still held promise. They were his, and he would never let them feel abandoned again. Not by lies, not by fear, not by the past, just love. Real honest love. Ending narration. In the end, John didn't need blood to be a father. He needed truth, courage, and the strength to rebuild from ruin. And as for Clarissa, the walls of justice finally closed in. Her past couldn't stay buried forever. Sometimes the scariest monsters don't live under our beds. They sleep beside us. Back in X pointing right. Thank you for watching till the end. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more real-life mysteries and emotional thrillers. And remember, sometimes the truth is more dangerous than the lie.